Alright, welcome to Ultima IX and the second day of the Garbathon marathon. I'm really happy to be opening things up for you guys today. And obviously this game has some notoriety in the world of bad games. It being the final installment in what is quite a beloved game series, the Ultima series. But a lot of people were disappointed, to say it in a mild way, with this particular game. It's the first of the Ultima games in full 3D, and according to most, they probably should have kept it in the good old isometric 2D, but yeah. Anyway, let's get started. So, we're being summoned by Lord British for a final adventure here in Britannia. Oh, this is planet Earth actually. So, as you can see, we have electrical lights, but we'll be traveling into the medieval world of Britannia, or like medieval with fantasy elements, obviously. But before we can get there, we have to grab a few necessities. One being this very handy med kit, which will allow us to not have to pick up any potions, as the med kit can heal us continuously.
Visit the training area on the northwest side of your house.
So here we're going to be going into the debug room, and I messed that jump up.
My next piece of counsel, left click on the
Let's try that again.
that will appear by your bed.
So this is like a sort of an Easter egg that the developers put in the game. They have all these teleporters that allow you to go to different parts of the game, and they didn't think you'd be able to complete the game from here, but with this upcoming trick here, I'm able to swim across the deep seas. So you can see the oxygen meter at the top of the screen is ticking down rather quickly, but by opening and closing my journal, which is like the pause menu in the game, I get a few frames every time I do this of invulnerability, where which will allow me to just barely get across in certain points where the peninsulas are close by. So normally the game would have you like complete every area in order before you open up new destinations for your boats, which will take you to like other areas of the game. But with this sequence break, we can go pretty much anywhere at any time. So that's obviously quite useful for speedrunning. Now, basically the story of the game is that the land of Britannia has had its virtues corrupted by the Guardian and his evil columns. And the way we bring virtue back to the land is by cleansing a bunch of shrines. And to cleanse a shrine you need a sigil and a rune of virtue. And each place sort of has their own patron virtue. Now in this run we won't be cleansing a single one of those shrines, so everyone in this land are going to remain very unvirtuous. And for the people of this place, Moonglow, they are a bunch of wizards who have the virtue of truth, but since it's been corrupted they're all going around telling lies, and unfortunately for this run it's going to remain that way. Now, right now, I've just grabbed that book you see in the bottom of the screen, which is a journal that will be shortly exchanged for some useful spells. And the other thing I picked up, the weird pentagram thingy, is a spell scroll with a spell that's super broken. Actually, when you use that spell, the next jump you input after using it, you can jump through any obstacle, AI, wall, anything really. Unfortunately though, we only get 3 instances of it in this run. So we're gonna quickly go through some dialogue here. Basically we have to go steal a shield from one of the other inhabitants of this place, and she'll give us the sigil that we need in exchange. So even though we don't have to cleanse any shrines, we still need to get all the sigils, as we need all of those to defeat the Guardian in the end. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, which is also one of the things that makes this game notorious, is that it crashes a lot, so I will be saving quite a bit. Now that's just a little trick to avoid having to do a puzzle to get access to that area. we can simply, yeah, as you saw, grab the shield we need through the barrier. And here we're gonna give the journal back to this guy in here, and he's gonna thank us for saving him from the bandits that are in his house. But we haven't actually killed them, so I guess he's still in trouble. So now, as you can see, I have a few more spells. Here I'm gonna make the first save, because the game does sometimes crash when I speak to this woman. Okay. There we go. First sigil in hand. So that paper scroll with the hand on, that is the writ of honesty. So now we have everything that we came for in this area, so we can head off to the next place. Which is actually the place we arrived with the teleporter, but we can't go there immediately because we need some of the spells from here, and yeah, having to go back would just take a longer time. Oh, so we want to avoid swimming as much as possible. Now here, I'm going to open up the inventory while I'm jumping past this enemy that you might have spotted from the edge of the screen. As a lot of enemies in this game don't attack you when you have your inventory open, so that's nice. Okay, gonna do a little more of the special swimming. I sort of imagine the avatars using the book as some kind of flotation device. I have to be a little bit careful here, because if I don't mash correctly or like get the right timing with all of my inputs, I might run out of oxygen too fast, but it looks like I'm okay. So if you want to go really fast in this game, when you swim across these places, you want to allow the oxygen meter to tick down as much as possible. But obviously, since this is a no reset run, I'm not taking any chances. So I'm just giving it a nice good margin. Okay, so this area here, Minok, their virtue is sacrifice, and basically the way it's been corrupted is they've started doing human sacrifice, and the leader of these people, yeah, thinks he's better than everyone else. Okay, so here we're gonna use the Wizard's Eye spell to get the jump through into this wagon, which basically avoids having to do a whole entire dungeon. Now we unfortunately have to spend 2 entire instances of that spell to get both in and out of the wagon. But it's worth it because it means we get to skip an entire dungeon, which is actually one of the longer dungeons in the game. So there will only be 3 dungeons that we will be entering in this run, and 2 of them, well, all 3 actually, we will be completing in a rather unusual way. So I got the teardrop of sacrifice from that wagon. Now I'm swimming back to the main peninsula of Britannia, or actually going there for the first time. Normally, obviously, that would be where you would arrive at the start of the game. But since we started from the debug room, we're sort of doing things a little bit out of order. But basically, I think the developers thought that going through the teleporters in the debug room, since there's no way of getting the boat, there's no way of like progressing the story so the boat joins you in like all the places where the teleporters can take you to. I guess they just thought that you wouldn't be able to do much other than just like mess around and have a laugh. But with the swimming trick, the debug room suddenly becomes very useful. Okay, so now we're headed to U. Actually, the sigil we need is very close by to where we are right now, but we have to trigger, we have to read the Book of Truth before we can trigger the big vulture, which will ask us some questions, the answer to which will grant us the honor of possessing the sigil. So, yeah. But it's fine, because on the way we will be picking up the last one of those wizard's eye spells to jump through another wall, saving some time later on. And these guys here, these goblins, are one of the enemy types that the inventory trick doesn't work on, so I just have to jump past them. Which isn't too difficult, though this guy sometimes can block my way. It doesn't look like it's gonna happen today. Okay, so this is sort of like a weird elfish kind of settlement with a bunch of tree houses, but actually there aren't any elves in this game, it's just humans and I guess a few gargoyles living here. So here I'm gonna open up the inventory again, just to disable the AI of an upcoming archer that you might spot on the left side here. And a giant coming up in the cave on the other side of this river. So basically, this trick doesn't work if you open the inventory after being in the control zone, or like after an enemy having already aggroed you. So you want to open up the inventory in advance. Okay, so I just grabbed the last of those pentagram spells, the Wizard's Eye, and the black potion, which even though we don't need any healing for the duration of the run, this is an invisibility potion, which is quite nice to have for a later part. Just coming up quite a bit later, actually. So here there's like a big puzzle where you have to put some books back on the shelf, but if you find the little part of so basically you have to read the Book of Justice, which is behind a shelf, and when you put a bunch of books back in their place, it opens up for it. But as you can see, the Book of Justice just sticks out a little bit through the shelf, which allows me to read it through the shelf and not have to do the whole puzzle. So now we just headed back the way we came, and we're gonna have a chat with the big demigod vulture creature thingy, which basically will determine if we're worthy to possess the sigil of truth. No, wait, we're past truth now. Hang on, what virtue is this? Justice, right. So that area U are all about justice, and they have this whole big prison where, because the virtue of justice has been corrupted, they're throwing anyone for doing anything. So basically there's like a cutscene with a guy who has like gotten really drunk and hurt himself, and so he sues the bartender, and the bartender gets thrown in prison. And unfortunately we won't have time to free him from that. Okay, so now on top of this mountain we will be meeting up with the vulture, the majestic. Ooh, shit, I froze the game. So that is kind of unfortunate, because I haven't remembered to save. Ooh. I guess that's what you get when you forget to save in this game. That's a little bit embarrassing. So that's at least a few minutes time loss there. So basically what happened is, if you like jump towards the vulture, sometimes, like quite rarely actually, it freezes the player character. There's a bunch of ways this game can crash, and that's one of them. Okay, luckily though, the time estimate that I've given for the organizers is a little bit longer than what it actually takes me to complete the game. So it should still be good to finish within an hour. But that's obviously not what you want to see. Alright, so I guess now I have a little bit more time to talk about the wonderful development history of the game. So the game was sort of rushed to market, even though it had been in development for like 4 years or something. Pretty much because if you know anything about the Ultima series, you know that obviously Ultima Online is the famous MMORPG, one of the first of its kind, and it was being developed at the same time this game was being developed. And so by the later stages of development, as this game was sort of being restarted, the development of this game was being restarted a number of times. EA, who were overseeing the development of the game, just decided that all the Origin employees, Origin being the name of the actual developer of the game, that they should focus on Ultima Online instead. And so this game was sort of neglected and ended up being finished in like half a year, even though it had been in development for ages. But yeah, it also changed a lot during the development cycle, because it actually started out also as an isometric game, like the other Ultima games, and I think a lot of fans would have hoped that it was published like that as well. Seeing the final product. But you know, I am not one of the people who hate on this game that much. Obviously, I'm playing it, and I think also like one of the central aspects of this event is that, you know, a lot of bad games, they sort of get a new life when you try to complete them as fast as possible. And I think this is quite a nice speed game. Okay. So hopefully I won't do anything quite as embarrassing as forgetting to save again. So I actually showed off this game at the start of the week for the Questing for Glory marathon, so I had a little warm up there. But there I had my friend commentating and also reminding me to save. So now I guess I have to remind myself. Okay. In fact, I'll just save right there. So the reason why I'm jumping everywhere, and the reason why it's the fastest movement option, is due to this beautiful armor which I picked up in the debug room. You might have seen as I started the game, I exited my house in just the character's underwear. But in the debug room, there's a number of those teleporter pads that instead of teleporting you to an area of the map, it equips you with various armor. And the armor I'm wearing now is the artifact armor, which has different magical properties. So I have swamp boots, which will come in handy later on when I have to traverse a swamp. And I also have the sentry leggings, which is the trousers that I'm wearing, which basically allow me to jump further, and it makes jumping by far the fastest movement option. The second fastest movement option is strafing. So I did that a little bit in the start of the game before I got this armor equipped. But other than that, I won't be using it too much. There is another category that I run of this game called No Debug Room, which basically is exactly what the word implies. Just trying to complete the game as fast as possible, but without using the debug room. So starting the game in the normal fashion, which I guess you won't, unless you know what the normal way of starting the game is, you won't be seeing it in this run. Another nice thing about starting the game from the debug room is I get to keep this sword, which is the Avatar's practice sword, but just turns out to be one of the strongest weapons in the game. Okay, so we're back up to where we left off. And this time I'm just gonna be careful. There we go. Now we have the Quill of Justice. Okay. So actually I don't want to slide down there, but luckily it's not too much of a problem, as I can climb up here in with a correct jump. So now we're gonna enter the first dungeon of the game, which is actually, this is supposed to be one of the first things you do after you arrive at Britannia, but turns out it's faster to do things in a slightly different order. So here with okay, and we have a game crash. Luckily though, this time around I did get a save in, not too far away. Okay. That's simply part of playing Ultima IX. The game crashes a lot, even after a bunch of developer patches and even like a only semi-official patch. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, I'll just get a save in there. The game sort of has different moods where sometimes it runs very smoothly and doesn't crash at all. And that's when you can PB. Uh-oh. That's not good. But sometimes it decides, no, you can't just have fun. And I guess that is my biggest frustration with the game. And also something that really does limit how good times you can get in the game. Because if a number of runs just dies to that. Okay, this isn't actually a place where the game usually crashes. I'm going to use this jump to get out of bounds. So basically, whenever the game loads a new stage, in certain places at least, you can use a well-timed jump to get out of bounds. So the game sort of spawns you in the new map a little bit more forwards than what you left off in the previous one. And so if you jump towards a wall that's close by, in some places the game will let you clip out of bounds like that. And there's another one. So now we'll just be able to skip pretty much this entire dungeon, go straight to the end. And here at the end I definitely want to do some saving, since this lava can kill me very quickly. And we'll also be facing off with one of our old companions from the Ultima series, YOLO, who has been swayed by the Guardian and is now a guy we might potentially have to kill. But it really depends on the RNG of the sword swipe, because as you saw we didn't one-hit kill him, and that means we get to show him mercy, which unfortunately is actually a bit slower than killing him. Okay. So the reason I had to go across the bridge here, and also the reason I have to pick up this this rune, because as I said earlier, we don't actually need any of the runes to cleanse shrines as you would normally do completing this game. But the reason I have to pick up this particular one, and I had to touch that trigger on the other side of the bridge, is because it basically enables a sequence later on that we can't skip, because it's necessary to get another one of the sigils. So this dungeon is part of the quest to cleanse the virtue of compassion, which is Britain, the sort of main castle area of Britannia. That's their virtue. And the way it's been corrupted is they've decided to be very compassionate to all the poor and sick people and just ship them off to a swamp town. So now we're just exiting this dungeon. Unfortunately, in this game there's a number of dungeons that don't have a quick TP out once you beat the dungeon, so you have to backtrack the whole way through. And we can't do that part out of bounds, unfortunately. Rats are also enemy that can be slightly annoying sometimes, because they are quite big and can block your way. So now we use the same trick to get out of bounds in the overworld, and here I'm going to save because the lava on the left side has reaches a lot further than what it looks like. For some reason both lava and water is often, it looks smaller than it actually is. But I guess it's because they only need to, it only needs to be visible like inside the world. It makes sense to, I guess, save computer resources to have it invisible out of bounds. But I definitely don't think the developers expected this view on their beautiful world. So now we're traversing the lands of Britannia in a slightly different fashion, but going to the other side to go into the dungeon Destard, or Destard, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And that's another dungeon we won't be completing in quite the usual way. And obviously it can, if I'm not paying attention, I can sort of lose my bearing, as there aren't too many like landmarks in this strange void. Now, one quite nice thing about the out of bounds in the overworld here is that, unlike in the dungeons, you don't just fall to the sort of bottom. You can sort of jump up a little bit if you want. You can go down. So it just gives more options for how you want to traverse this area. And also allows me to just get to this trigger here. So normally to enter this dungeon you would have to freeze the ice block that's up above, which would also involve getting another spell scroll to do so. But since we can approach it from out of bounds, we can just touch the trigger. And quite nice of the developers to actually leave a little gap that you can squeeze through there. So this is actually completed in the normal way, one of the longest dungeons in the game. You have to assemble that entire egg with a bunch of like magical eggshells located around the dungeon, and then to open this barrier. But luckily you can just sort of strafe past it. So that's quite convenient. And now there's a big dragon boss which has a long speech, which we'll avoid by just jumping to the side here and avoiding the whole trigger, which triggers that cutscene, and also the boss's AI, so in this situation it's not the hardest to beat. And here we go, we need this dragon head for later, basically to prove our worth to some guys that are gonna help us fight some demons later on. But we have to prove our valor by showing that we've killed a dragon. Now we're going to use the same strafing trick to get past the barrier. So I think that barrier, it sort of reacts to how the camera is positioned, weirdly enough. So basically when you strafe, the camera is sort of side on, and so that manipulates it in a way where you can sort of squeeze past. Now here's going to be another important place to save, as this teleporter has a tendency to sometimes crash the game. Now here I'm gonna pop the invisibility potion that I picked up earlier. Halt! In order to squeeze past this guy. So even though I'm invisible, he can still sort of follow me. The main thing the invisibility potion does in this game is that the enemies won't attack you. They'll still sort of stalk you and even sometimes talk to you, which can be a bit creepy. Now we're just exiting the dungeon. Unfortunately, though, we can't go back the same way we came in, as there's no exit trigger there. A lot of what the dungeons in this game involves when you complete them in the normal way is finding a bunch of like hidden buttons that you have to press, which can be a bit tedious sometimes. And the game does have some pretty notorious dungeons where everything sort of looks similar. Especially one dungeon where you're in like a big massive sewer system, which for some reason is located underneath the sea. Not sure why, but but that is one dungeon that has frustrated a lot of people through time. Now I'm a little bit concerned because my invisibility is still active, and that tells me that maybe a certain bug has happened.
Now, the word of power.
But I guess I won't know for a little while still. Hopefully we will still be able to complete the game. So basically this happened one time before where the character sort of stayed invisible, and then later on there's a door that's usually supposed to be unlocked, which was locked for some reason. And I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the invisibility staying active, but yeah. Hopefully we'll still be good to go. But you never know with this game. So now, having left the dungeon, we will go to the swamp town, where all the poor and sick people are being shipped by their not so compassionate sovereigns. And we get to watch a little cutscene, which depending on how lucky we get might be shorter or a little bit longer.
Look out, Mayor!
So that's the mayor of Britain, who's out looking for his daughter. And now he's gonna... Doesn't look like he's in that much danger. The rat's just sort of hanging out. Now this guy's supposed to come in and save the day, but we hope that he won't have time to kill the rat, because if he does, sometimes the cutscene gets extended, and it doesn't look like he had time to kill it, so that's good. So basically, if he has time to kill the rat, there's like a little post dialogue where the mayor says, "Oh, thanks for saving me. I didn't think someone like you living in this place could ever be a hero," or something like that. And he realizes the error of his ways. But I guess he didn't realize it after all. So here we have to kill a few goblins to save the daughter. And it's gonna take her a little while to realize that she's been rescued. Because I guess the game has to realize it too. There she goes. Thank you for rescuing me. I'm already like on the other side of the swamp. So now we just need the reward from the mayor. Okay, and the reward, of course, is the Heart of Compassion, which is just what we needed. So now let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sigils. Now we're gonna head off to Trinzic, whose virtue is honor. So obviously they're very dishonorable right now. And once again, we won't be helping them much with that. This is just another one of those locations where you can do some of the weird book swimming to get across. The swimming is so slow in this game, so you really want to minimize it as much as possible. Now these hellhounds that we're gonna see here, they can kill me in one fire breath, so we definitely want to keep the journal open. No, sorry, the inventory, so their AI doesn't activate. Now this is the last dungeon we'll be completing in the game. This arrow can sometimes kill me. But not today. Okay. So here we're going to use this rune that we picked up earlier to just sort of climb up here. And actually you're supposed to do an entire puzzle to remove that statue, but as you saw, the trigger to teleport to this second area of the dungeon just sort of slightly sticks out of the one side of the statue, which is very convenient. Now here there's a big cutscene with this guy destroying the sigil, and we have to pick up one of these goblets, but luckily you can just sort of grab it from before the trigger.
Welcome. Speak now the mantra of honor.
So actually he destroys the real sigil of honor, the real goblet of honor. So now we have like just a regular old goblet, and we then have to do honorous deeds in order to infuse this regular goblet with honor, sort of create a new goblet of honor. But actually that's not the next thing we'll be doing. First we are gonna head off to the island of Valoria, who, surprise surprise, have the virtue of valor, which I'm not gonna be able to explain what the difference between that and honor is. I guess maybe there is a difference. In the game at least it seems very much to be synonymous. So basically the goblet of honor, in order to restore honor you have to fight some spiders, and in order to restore valor you have to fight some demons. So I guess that's the difference. Anyway, now we're coming up on the place with the door that might be locked since this strange invisibility glitch happened. And if that is the case, I'm not quite sure what to do. Hopefully we'll be okay.
Get me another mug of that fine beer, and pour one for yourself.
Yep.
Too.
So that's the door that I experienced was locked at one point, but luckily that calms me down quite a bit. It would be strange actually for that randomly to be dependent on this weird glitch. Anyway, brace yourselves for a very loud sound.
To come here, you living weaklings. You are the ones who lost.
Yeah, so basically some sounds in this game are mastered really badly. Okay, that's awkward. Guess I got carried away talking there. But yeah, some sounds are really loud in this game, and there's actually one that's way worse in the final boss chamber.
One for yourself too.
You're in high spirits today.
Luckily we didn't lose too much progress. There's no autosave in this game, so you basically just have to do a lot of saving.
You to come here, you living weaklings. You are the ones who lost the
And this guy here you can actually do the inventory trick on. But I think I just opened the inventory a little too late when I died on the other one. So that's the guy who's going to help us kill the spiders a little bit later on. And as you saw, there's like a little break in the conversation, and if you input the right jump just then, you can sort of fly off the balcony as the rest of the conversation is happening, just saving a few seconds, but alas, I didn't get the jump in. So now, of course, as I mentioned, we're gonna head off to Valoria first, before we return to kill the spiders. Oh, we don't need that now. Instead, we need to save. So this is one of the shorter swims, so we only need just a few of these journal buffers. There we go. This area does tend to crash the game pretty often, so I won't take any chances here. Now, in the original route for this game, I just got all the sigils, and but it turns out that the sigil that you get in this area you can actually get 2 times, which means we get to skip the Ankh of Spirituality, which is the slowest one by far to get in the game, because in order to get that you have to first encounter the Guardian, who is the final boss of the game, and then you have to go all the way back to Lord British Castle. And in this way we don't even have to talk to Lord British either. He was actually the guy who summoned us to come save the land from the Guardian, but by the end of the game we won't have encountered him at all. I was just being a little bit careful with that guy, because he does have the ability to kill me with one single attack. So the way we get the Dagger of Valor twice is actually by diving under the lava here. So there's a cutscene in here where the guy at the gate, not the guy we're talking to now, the other guy, the guy in the blue costume here, it turns out he's a bit of a coward, so he hands over the sigil, the Dagger of Valor, to the demons in exchange for them leaving these people alone.
You think?
But for that cutscene, they've sort of hidden the dagger underneath the lava here, and they didn't think you'd be able to get to it, but it turns out they left a nice convenient hole in the lava where you can dive in. So here I'm going to use one of the spells I got earlier, which is this fire shield, which just means I take less damage from fire. So I can just grab that and hopefully get out before the spell runs out. And then I can get it again a second time. So to trigger we have to trigger the cutscene with the guy giving the dagger to the demons, and to do so we just have to talk to everyone inside the volcano settlement here, apart from the woman. And then we need to go back to the entrance. And this cutscene is going to look a little bit strange since we've obviously interfered with one of the main props, which is the Dagger of Valor.
Where is Eris?
So let's see what Eris comes up with. Now, he has promised that he's going to give them the Dagger of Valor, but where is the Dagger of Valor?
Do what you have promised, Eris, and I will let you live.
So now he's going to start
Here
summoning
it is. Here's the sigil. Now go.
the sigil from under the
Do
lava.
with it what you will, but keep your end of the deal and leave us now. I have fulfilled my
But I think
part.
right about now he must be feeling awkward, because where is the dagger? So actually in the real cutscene someone gives him the dagger, and then the demon, being a demon, stabs him with the dagger right away. But since no dagger is present, he gets punched instead.
Where are your heroes now, Valorian
You also gotta love the delayed reaction
Remain cowering in your burrows,
from
for
Eris.
I and my brothers now possess your treasured sigil of valor.
Well, at least they possess one of them. So I guess at this point it seems like I'm gonna be invisible for the rest of the game. which is interesting. But basically now we have to coax 2 guys into helping us fight the demon triumvirate. So basically the book that we read where the big golem thingy was guarding, the book of demonology, says that in order to defeat these demons you have to kill them all at the same time. So each of those 2